In this new episode of Talking Clock, we sit down with Adrian, who is one of Singapore's biggest Patek and Rolex collectors and goes by Watch Superstars on Instagram. For the first part, he shares tips on how to deal with authorized dealers, and we discuss watch fatigue, as well as how he is changing as a collector. Before we start, a quick reminder to subscribe for new weekly watch videos. Enjoy. Especially for a lot of young collectors out there or people who are newer to watch collecting. In Singapore, I think the main way to get started is through an AD, especially for Patek Rolex. There really isn't much other choice. So yeah, how did you get started on the whole journey of buying from an authorized dealer? And do you have any tips for people, if they were trying to start today, what would you say to those sorts of people?
I think things have really changed a lot from when I started my watch collecting journey. You could quite easily walk into an AD and you would see like Batman, Batman, Hulks, Pepsi on display, right? While they might not be readily available, probably just a 1-2 month wait and you'll probably be able to get them. Now things have definitely changed, even though markets have slowed down a little bit. So I guess it's very, very hard to make that kind of fair comparison of walking into an AD today versus walking into an AD, say 5 years ago, right? So if you ask me what my advice is to new collectors starting a journey, unfortunately, I believe it's going to be a lot more difficult. Right, there are some ADs who would probably say that they are not entertaining anymore, like new requests, from new customers. They want to still focus on the existing customer. So perhaps you have to work really from the bottom up, right? Starting from models which are not so popular, supporting brands which are not the big names. We have to start somewhere and not knowing whether you actually achieve the end game, right? What you really want.
Yeah. Then in your opinion now, I think like you said, markets are starting to slow a bit, especially for a lot of the more hype watches, I think, since the peak. But well, then again, this past peak was very unnatural in a way. I think watches went up too much, too fast. But now that things have come down a bit, would you say that, let's say that hypothetically you were to start from zero now, or if there are certain pieces that you're chasing now, do you think it's worth buying from gray market, or do you think that, how would you describe the benefits of buying from an AD nowadays?
I think that's a very good question. I don't think there's a right or wrong to this. Markets have fallen to a point that for certain models, it makes sense buying from a gray dealer. So for example, you could walk into Far East Plaza and you can probably get a Milgauss at below retail or close to retail right now, right? Yeah. The Daytonas, I'm talking about the precious metals, the white gold, the yellow gold, the rose gold, oyster flex. You can probably get a brand new one, dated 1-2 months ago, unworn, 10 to about 15k above retail, right? So if you ask me if I am just someone starting out and I really want a gold Daytona, oyster flex, where do I go? I think I'll probably just head to the gray dealers. I have a choice of the dial color, I have the choice of the case color, whether it's yellow gold, white gold, rose gold, and I'm paying the 15 grand premium, right? So versus buying something that I don't really want and then having to perhaps sell it off at a big loss, I think that would make more sense.
Yeah, and I guess in the case of buying from gray, well, you're not building a long-term relationship there, but at the same time, I guess you get the watch you want immediately rather than the uncertainty of buying from an AD.
That's correct, yeah.
Then along the lines of AD, I think one thing that's interesting is a lot of brands over the past 3 years have started going more into their own sort of boutiques. AP, I think, was probably the first, but we see a lot of the Richmond brands doing the same. VC lange. In your opinion, what are your thoughts on the brands going into just that boutique business model?
That's a very good question as well. From a business point of view, I mean, I'm a businessman myself, and I think Rolex and Patek, they have definitely made the right decision in having ADs to support them. Given the current, I mean, I'm not talking about 1-2 years ago when market was hot. Anybody can sell anything. But right now, current market conditions, if you actually look in the market, you see the second-hand prices of AP, VCs, they're not holding up as well as your Pateks and your Rolex.
For sure.
Yeah. And, well, I might be wrong on this, but this is my take, right? So I feel that the reason for this is because for Patek and for Rolex, you have the whole network of ADs to support your brand, right? While for APs or VC for that matter, you don't have this huge network of retailers to support your brand or ADs to support your brand. So I'm not sure whether this is going to hold out for long. If the market were to fall further, they might not be as efficient, right, in terms of holding up the prices, in terms of being able to make that kind of sale, because their network is definitely a lot smaller.
Yeah, but I think prices aside, also one big advantage of buying from an AD is that, for example, like Hourglass, you get access to Rolex, Patek, and potentially independent brands as well. But buying from a boutique-only brand, AP, you have to focus money into that one relationship, and it's not going to get you access to other brands either. And I know that for you used to buy APs as well, but since they became the whole boutique model, I don't think you've really bought anything from them, right?
Yeah, so I used to buy my APs from Hourglass and also from grey dealers, because back in those days, the grey dealers were giving huge discounts for brand new watches, brand new pieces that they were importing in themselves. You are right to say that, building a profile, assuming if I bought the AP from an AD, it definitely helps my profile. It will enable me to get, priority over other brands and other models as well. And that definitely helps me. Yeah. But now that, in a way, they have all gone independent, setting up their own boutiques, and you can only have access through the boutiques. What I feel that sometimes they also do like customer service, right? It also depends very much on, I would say, the SA that you follow in your AD, right? But my buying experience, unfortunately, from a boutique direct is not as good as the AD.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Then just now you mentioned an interesting point, which is I think the salesperson that you work with can be very important.
Yeah.
And I think in the case for many people, not everyone can just walk in and have a relationship with, say, someone super senior in that particular outlet. Do you think it matters a lot whether, as in, is it very important for someone to go in through a recommendation and just get a relationship with someone very senior in the boutique? Or do you think it's still fine if they go in and, it's a junior sort of serving them, in your opinion?
Well, in my opinion, it's always better to know someone who's senior. But at the same time, the SA is a human being as well, and the chemistry between you and the SA is always very important. This is the basics of a human relationship, I would say. Something that's very important to take note of when you are creating this relationship with your SA, with your AD, that things are not just one way. It's just not them allocating you pieces. For me, it's always a both two-way relationship, meaning that I will introduce friends to buy from them. I will also buy pieces which are not hot popular models, but which I like to support them. If they come out with a boutique exclusive to the AD, for example, a model that's exclusive to the boutique, I will also support by buying a piece, right? So I don't think it's as simple as knowing the boutique manager and then walking in and getting allocation. It's a relationship that you actually build for a long term. Try to put yourself in the AD's shoes, try to put yourself in your SA shoes. You've got targets to meet as well. He can't possibly allocate you every single Daytona that comes in. Unfortunately, that's not what people think. They think that they can get every piece that comes in. So they do have other customers to allocate the pieces as well, and it's just not you.
On the AD sort of experience, would you say that there are any sort of big things that you'd recommend people to avoid? I think you mentioned it is a human sort of relationship after all. And, not everyone has like a successful journey like building that, as we know.
So my advice is, please don't just walk into AD if you do not know them and just ask immediately for a Daytona as the very first watch that you want to buy, or a Nautilus, or an Aquanaut, or a Submariner. I think they get probably hundreds of calls and messages a day on the same thing again and again, and they reply the same answer again and again, and they are just really sick of it, right? So again, put yourself in the AD shoes. If you are in his shoes, what are you going to answer? Who would you rather speak to? Someone who wants to build a journey, that's what they call,
hourglass,
with the AD, or someone who just, I want a Daytona, right? So I assume you have to be very tactful as well, and play your game right. Make them like you.
Yeah. Oh, then also, I think one last topic to mention, especially for the newer collectors in Singapore. So our city has a few key sort of ADs. Cortina and Hourglass, I think, would be the two biggest. And then, of course, we have smaller ones like Emperor, KHH. What else? Sincere is under Cortina, so that doesn't really count.
All.
Yeah, that's about all. So what are your recommendations for people who are just starting their journey and want to choose an AD to work with? Because I don't think it's advisable to like spread all your capital over everyone, right? So is it like a brand thing on which one to choose, or how would you sort of like go about it?
I'm actually very neutral.
Okay.
If you ask me which AD I'll go to, I do support Hourglass, I do support Cortina. I think bottom line is you're probably going to the AD for the brands they carry, because there's some brands that Cortina carries that Hourglass does not carry. Or there's some indie brands that Hourglass carry and Cortina does not carry. Hourglass is very strong in independent brands. Cortina, because of the acquisition of Sincere, they also are starting to have a huge selection of independent brands, and I think they're also taking on more. So it'll be very dependent on what watches you actually want to buy, or brands you want to buy, and which AD you go to, I would assume. And that's how I always base my purchases on.
Fine. Then I guess across most of the ADs, actually probably all the ADs, the common denominator is Rolex. I think the best, most well-known brand in Singapore. I'm curious, was Rolex the watch brand? I mean, obviously going through your posts, we see that you probably have one of the most comprehensive sports Rolex collections. Was this the brand that sort of kickstarted your interest in watches, or how did it go?
So yes, the very first piece that very first Rolex that actually I own was a Rolex that was a present that was given to me by my mom when I graduated from my O-levels. And so this one is the piece right here, which is the Air King, right? It's still with me today, and I would like to say that it's still in a relatively mid condition. I guess that sort of kick-started my whole collection in watches, and it was only probably in the mid-30s that I was able to afford more watches, and watches that I really loved and enjoyed. So I always believe that Rolex is a staple. It's a staple. It's just as Patek, in a way, it's a staple. If it's watches that you're into, perhaps start with something like, for Rolex, a Submariner, a black sub, and then move up to, a GMT, and then to a Daytona, or perhaps you could start with a Datejust, right? I don't know, it's very hard to actually pinpoint exactly as to whether I started with Rolex or I started with Patek, because, as a young collector back then, you just buy whatever catches your fancy.
Yes.
Right? And back in those days, Panerais were hot. Panerais were going at a premium. Panerais were hard to acquire.
Yeah, and offshores were...
They were as difficult as Rolexes today.
Yes.
Right? Unfortunately, things have flipped around, and Panerais are not really worth much in the second-hand market, and it's quite easily acquired. So I do have my fair share of IWCs, my Panerais, my Frank Mullers, and various other brands, including Hublots as well. Well, I would say, I'm not sure whether I would consider them mistakes, but they were part of my watch collecting journey.
Sure.
Yes, there are some pieces that I don't really wear them anymore, and I do think, why did I actually buy them in the first place? But I'm sure every watch collector out there has probably made the same mistake, if you actually consider mistake. But having said that, sometimes, when you keep them in a drawer and then you go back to it after 2-3 years, your love for it tends to grow for it again. Your interest for it tends to grow for it again. And then you'll like it again.
I'm curious though, because obviously now you're in such a state where, you own everything from RMs to like perpetual calendars. I think you have the best Nautilus there to buy, the 5740 in my eyes. It's the Grail Nautilus. You have high-end independents. Does Rolex as a brand, the watches that they come out with, still excite you anymore?
I have this problem, Sean. I have an excessive compulsive disorder kind of thing. Since young, I collected sticker books, and I just had to complete the entire sticker book.
Yeah.
I collected TY beanies. You have no idea how many TY beanies I have at home. And something you did not know of me, I have more than 100 swatches at home.
Wow.
I have a huge swatch collection, and to be honest, today I'm not exactly sure where I stored them, and I'm still looking for them. But I have them somewhere, and I have all the limited edition swatches, and those were a lot more affordable in those days, right? They were like $80, $100, $120, right? So it's smaller ticket items, things that, as someone who just started work or as a student, I could afford to buy and collect. So this has led to the same problem with Rolex right now, where I feel that, I need to have like every single sports model in my collection. If not, I feel it's incomplete.
Sure.
Right? But things have actually changed this year. Perhaps I'm a bit jaded. I was just looking at I was at Watches and Wonders a couple of months ago, and I saw the green Sky Dweller, and it's like, wow, that's nice. And I asked myself, right, I have the blue dial, black dial, and the white dial Sky Dweller.
Yeah.
I barely wear them. Perhaps I wear the blue one 4 or 5 times a year, right? Never touched the black dial one before. And so if I'm going to buy this green dial, Sky Dweller, how many times am I going to wear it before it goes back in my safe? And it's just going to add on. And so all these just keep accumulating. It's just similar to my collection of whiskey, similar to my collection of champagne, right? So you just keep buying and buying and accumulating and accumulating and accumulating. That's assuming that you don't bundle any pieces even. It has to end somewhere. Where is it going to end, right? At this point of time, I am actually asking myself, what do I actually want in a watch, right? And that's something you should ask yourself, as even as a new collector or as a seasoned collector like you. What do you want in a watch, Sean? What do you look at in a watch before buying? And I always ask myself, so for example, I think from the latest collection, I like the new Rolex 1908.
Yep.
I like, even the IWC Ingenieur, right? I love the Chopard, the Samandal, what's that called again? The
Alpine Eagle.
Alpine Eagle, ultra slim salmon dial. Yes, if I get it, it's nice. But how many times I'm going to wear it?
Yep.
What's going to happen 3 months, 6 months down the road? Yeah, I get this green sky dweller. How many times am I going to wear it this month? And then what happens down the road again?
Yep.
Right? And then next year a purple one that comes out. Am I going to buy it as well? So is the Panda Daytona, well, there are a few differences and nonsense in the design, thinner rings, subdials, the batons are thinner, right? The thickness of the watch is different. From a distance, it looks exactly the same to me.
Yep.
It doesn't make that much a difference if I have or not have it. Given a chance to own it, yeah, I'll be happy to own one, but I'm not chasing for one. You know what I'm trying to say? Yeah. So similar to Pateks, right? So today I'm wearing, say, 5968A, and they just launched the 5968R. Am I going to get it? Yes, I like it. If I have a chance to own it, yeah, I probably do. But again, is it going to? When is it going to end?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is something that I keep questioning myself, and that's a question that I'm just shooting back at you. It's like, what do you actually look in a watch? For me myself, I don't really sell my watches, so I actually keep everything, and it has come to a point that perhaps I should consider, things on a one in, one out basis. If I want to buy something, I let something go that I don't often wear. Perhaps I let go of my Panerai, perhaps I let go of my LWC, and then I will allow this Rolex to enter into my collection. Right? So it's a kind of one in, one out. So I maintain the number of pieces in my collection and try to be more disciplined. Yeah. So at this point in time, even if you ask me, I am a little bit at a crossroads. I'm thinking of more towards, of course, independence. I think that Simon Brett watch that was just launched. It's beautiful. I do think twice. I do think even 3 times or 4 times or 5 times whether I actually need that watch.
In next week's episode, we discuss Adrian's love for Patek, as well as some fun hypotheticals. Remember to subscribe so you don't miss it. Thank you for watching.